In an investor call, Bob Iger said that he was trying to quiet the noise for the Walt Disney Company. Well, it turns out that things were a lot louder there than we originally thought. A new video has come out saying that Bob Iger needs the company to be political. It was their responsibility to become political, and we're not quite sure that they've changed any of that. Let's talk about this leaked footage on That Park Place. Good morning, everyone. I am Jonas J. Campbell, and with me is Culture Casino, the perfect man to comment on this. Culture?
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to do this one. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so glad to have you here, and you are the perfect person to comment on this because we've been going over this subject in some form for years now, and now we have confirmation that Bob Iger is going to fix everything. Let's give some quick context here. This is Christopher Russo. He's the same guy who leaked the Reimagine Tomorrow videos, which famously had the not-so-secret agenda in them, and also some of the lesser-known videos in which the Walt Disney Company wanted to make sure that all of their employees were aware that they would be willing to pay for gender-affirming surgery for them or their children. Lots of that. And now somehow this video has been released. This is January 2021, right after January 6th. Culture, do you have anything you want to say before we get started here?
Just that what's fascinating about this is not just merely the confirmation bias, that it's also the fact that the company had been political since long before we were even made directly aware of it, and does again confirm everything that we'd been reporting from behind the scenes from people who were talking to us.
Right. And one thing I'll say for Bob Iger is he was very good at trying to make it sound like they were not being political when they were definitely being political. He took a stand in 2019 against certain issues. Anyways, we're not going to go into those right now. This is in the wake of January 6th. And what's the best way to put this? Bob Chapek was the CEO at that point, and Bob Iger was his boss. He was the executive chairman. So there's some question about who was in charge of the company. In this case, it was literally Bob Chapek, but he was supposed to be answering to Bob Iger. So let's get into it.
Well, I mean, Bob has talked about this eloquently since he's become CEO.
By the way, that is Bob Iger lying. He hated Bob Chapek's guts and probably did not respect his communication ability.
I'll say a couple of things about it. We've tended to shy away from politics. And in doing so, I think we've shied away from talking about issues that aren't political at all.
All right. So he's doing something called reframing here. He's trying to say that things that are definitely political are not actually political. They are inherently right or wrong, as he'll actually use the words right or wrong in just a moment here, which is reminiscent of certain other political movements.
Like the issues that we're talking about today. Because we believe in doing so, maybe it looks like we're taking a stand. Well, in that reality, we should be taking a stand. I take responsibility for this. I was CEO for 15 years. And so I manage the company's public-facing processes and how we were portraying ourselves. And I think that we have to be less cautious, as Bob, I think, was just alluding to, about such things and not be concerned, like just commenting about what happened in Washington last week. That's not political on our part at all. We know that what we saw was fundamentally wrong. And that.
So he's saying that the issue at January 6th, where people went into the Capitol building because apparently outraged because of the results of the election, was not political, which of all the issues to say are not political, a contested election is political in the most basic sense of the word. Culture?
Well, what's funny is in incidents prior that had occurred where, the Capitol building had been invaded by a certain political agenda or something of that nature with people who are dissatisfied with their governance, he didn't react the same way. He didn't have the same reaction. Probably not. It's done when it's done at a state level. Did he take a stand at that point saying that's fundamentally wrong? No. These are not ideals that he holds close to his heart. The ideal he holds close to his heart is his belief system, which is that fundamentally right or wrong, is going to be enforced by him and his opinion alone.
Right.
That's not comfortable.
Yeah, and the last time I checked, and it does change pretty rapidly. The Disney company is responsible for making TV shows, movies, and filming sports events. So why do we need to have a political stand on this? No, what he's saying here is that all companies need to make a stand for a particular political movement.
Yeah, what's scary about that, and I don't think that anybody's going to talk about, is that they run a news organization as well. So all of their news now is confirmed to be incredibly slanted on their vision of what's right and wrong.
That's a very good point. Thank you for bringing that up, Culture.
That it was rooted in hatred and disrespect and contempt and intolerance. And
I'm not exactly sure why the January 6th event is rooted in intolerance. I think that is projecting onto someone what you think they did something for. I would not have gone into the building. I'll say if I was there, I probably would not have gone into the building because um, I don't like going into places where I'm not supposed to be. I'm not sure how intolerance enters into that, but I think he's trying to paint a broad brush in order to say that people who support a particular political candidate are istophobes.
we should feel free as a company to comment about that without retribution. And another,
We should feel free to comment on that as a company without retribution. This is, if I'm not mistaken, this is before the Reedy Creek incident, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Without retribution. Wow, that's an interesting way to put it, Bob. Retribution. So you can comment on something without any consequences. That's what he's talking about.
I shudder to think what would happen if Bob Iger was on the other side of certain global conflicts that he is commenting on now.
I've heard this kind of rhetoric before. I'm just trying to place where.
Culture, go ahead and say it for the cheap seats if you want.
Oh, nothing. This is a particular kind of thinking that leads us to demonize particular groups of people, and then makes excuses for everybody else to not like them anymore, and makes it perfectly acceptable to do what it takes to rid yourself of those groups.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about that because of some emails that we know were going around in the wake of January 6th at the Walt Disney Company.
Ooh.
the thing I want to say that I've learned these last 9 to 12 months is, I'm very proud of a lot of the work we've done in terms of diversity and inclusion on screen. When we did Coco, for instance, at Pixar.
That was John Lasseter, who he fired before this.
That's true.
A great example of that, or Tiana, or of course, Black Panther is one of the great examples of that.
Okay, also Tiana, that was spearheaded again by John Lasseter, who pushed it into 2D animation before being, I don't know if he was overridden or what, but obviously they did 3D after that. Tiana and Coco are both John Lasseter creative endeavors. I'm not saying he deserves credit for the entire film, but those were done under John Lasseter, whom he fired. Black Panther, Bob Iger loves to talk about Black Panther because he's the only person ever who wanted to see a Black Panther movie. And he likes to imply that Ike Perlmutter never wanted a Black Panther movie. I don't think that's the case. I think that is a very loose interpretation of the facts. And, here's a crazy one. I think Black Panther might have been a better film under Ike Perlmutter's direction. Crazy thought. But you can disagree with me in the comments if you want. Culture, anything before we continue?
No, I'm with you.
All right.
I allowed those things to make me feel a bit complacent in a sense. It's not that I wanted to be that way, but I thought, wow, we did Black Panther. How great are we?
No. I did Black Panther. How great am I, Bob?
And it caused me to not focus as much as I should have on the culture of the company and the environment and in the voices that were telling those stories as opposed to just how they were being portrayed on the screen.
What we're viewing this out of context. We don't know what was said immediately before. We don't know what was said immediately after, but it really sounds like he is conflating the events of January 6th with some kind of diversity issue. because this isn't 2020. The things that happened in 2020 that were a large racial issue, that was, I don't want to say that was behind them, but this was not what was currently in the news. And this is a week after the events of January 6th. So if there's some other context here, please, Bob, enlighten us so that you can repair your image, which you view to be the image of the Walt Disney Company. The once and future CEO must be protected at all costs, even at the cost of the name of Walter Disney.
Just that I believe a lot of people have underestimated just how much ego is involved in the operation of the Disney Corporation now. Just how much certain parties view it as essentially their, almost sounds like birthright, doesn't it? The personal investment that he has in the entity that he's supposed to be a steward of, he is essentially adopted in total as his own and treats it as such. I think that should be a little concerning to shareholders, that he's not actually looking out for the betterment of the corporation, but really just as an extension of he himself.
Right. And I would say that the only reason he thinks he should quiet the noise, he used to be so good at communication. He used to be the only CEO that, that guy did it right. Someone who can get out there and do it off the cuff and kind of aw shucks his way into finessing an interview. He's the kind of guy that I think that if he doesn't come from a place of strength, he doesn't know how to handle himself. This guy right here, I think he needs to leave the Walt Disney Company as soon as possible. And the person who comes in doesn't need to be a continuation of him. It was years later before we considered Iger to be Eisner 2.0, because when he came in, he was a kind of a repudiation of Eisner. When he came in, he got to make deals with Pixar. He got to make deals with Marvel. He got to make deals with Lucasfilm. And of course, the ultimate overextension, the purchase of Fox.
Yes. Well, he was very good at purchasing things. As a weatherman, he was used to dealing with predictive models. And again, this is a guy who came up through the news division, which makes me terrified as what, was being reported inside of ABC before he even got into a position of authority. But, setting that aside, and everything that came along with it, and why he considers ABC the crown jewel, it's probably because of its news division, which he was a part of. But because he was a weatherman, he had an ability to look forward, he thought, and be able to successfully, outline what the outcomes could be and where to position the company. That kind of forward thinking is valuable. The ability to look ahead and see, which way the wind is blowing. And I know that that's funny in a lot of ways, but I think that's one of the reasons why he was seen differently than Eisner, as is now. The comparisons to the Eisner arc is almost the same. It's he got to the point where he operated the company in a manner that really destroyed much of what he acquired or created.
I would say that this company has gotten so far from Walt Disney himself that Eisner was getting away from that by releasing some direct-to-DVD sequels, among other things, among other problems. But the great crime of Eisner was diluting the Disney brand. Well, at this point now, Disney is essentially a rights holder for a lot of properties, and the word Disney means less and less, and it's less attached to the original name than it has been for years.
Right, because what is the differentiation of Disney as a whole? There is. I mean, you have a brand in Disney that used to be a lifestyle brand in and of itself, and now it's just a series of things that they own. They don't have a unique identity. There's no unique identity for Disney anymore. There's nothing you can point at or name that it reflects what they are any longer.
Right, because the traditional values aspect is no longer there. And traditional values have now become political. Because the thing that he said here, whether or not we have stated this already, he is insisting that the non-political become political. That is a classic tenet of certain Eastern philosophers. I want to say Eastern political scientists. I use the word scientist in the loosest sense of the word.
Yeah, I think that's pretty loose usage of the word, but look, I mean, we've been witness to what happens to cultures that have been subjected to that line of thinking. They become rather militant. and they become essentially they adapt a conqueror's attitude, and they try to acquire more and more through whatever means they can, whether it be subterfuge, which I would say was probably something that has been happening in the Disney company without people's knowledge for a long time. And they essentially go about at that point undermining all of the things that would hold up or support a a culture or a society that allows for a diversity of everything, including thought. Well, they absolutely can't have diversity of thought in their. Look, I know I've been doing this a lot lately, privately, but this is he is part of a new religion that well I would say is more cult like than anything else. You either he is you're with us or against us kind of a person now, and he's making his entire company, or has been reshaping this entire company into a reflection of his thoughts. It's obvious.
I would agree with that. And at this point, he's saying that because something happened in Washington that does not affect movies, it is now the imperative of the Walt Disney Company, or sorry, in January of 2021, it became the imperative of the company to comment on political issues. That is completely ridiculous. By the way, we know from the Gina Carano lawsuit that in her email, she was accidentally sent an email by Lynn Hale of Lucasfilm that the end of the chain was talking about Gina Carano, but when you look at the start of it, it's Bob Chapek wondering how in the world they're going to comment on January 6th. I would say, especially looking back at it, maybe the company didn't. What amazing. Maybe my local McDonald's doesn't need to comment on the events of January 6th. Maybe the company that makes Phineas and Ferb does not need to comment on the elections of the United States of America. Maybe the company that I don't know. What if it's Illumination? What are the minions with their butts hanging out of their overalls? What do they think about Donald Trump? This does not matter in any way. Bob, you have overinflated your sense of self and deflated the value of family entertainment.
Yeah,
because you have completely lost focus here. You have lost the plot entirely. In your quest to quote unquote improve the world, you have robbed the world of its greatest storytelling engine because you think that you can twiddle. Oh, well, if this person is this color and this person is this this group, then our entertainment will be better. No, you you have driven everyone out of the company that has an incentive to make a creative project. And your insistence, by the way, New York Times Steelbook Summit, we go back to this all the time, right across from Andrew Ross Sorkin. He said the reason that the Marvels failed was because there wasn't enough executive interference. Executives, generally speaking, do not make these films or television properties or creative endeavors great unless they are allowing the creative people to succeed.
Well, yeah, and very well said. The problem is that the creation by committee has always proven to produce very poor quality things. Too much interference has always led to bad situations. It used to be an old joke in Hollywood that there was too much interference in this particular project for it to be successful. I would say that now we're well beyond that, and they really do drive the creativity out of everything. There was a wonderful thoughts from Film Threat recently, if you get a chance to follow up on everything they've been covering, and the idea that you're driving creativity out of each and every entertainment company. There's nobody left because there's nobody there to bring thoughtful commentary on anything that you're trying to cover.
Right. If the commentary needs to stay within the approved by Bob Iger political message, you can put any film executive in there. But Bob Iger is the one whose statements we're considering today. So I'm going to say, if it has to be within Bob Iger's approved political message, which, by the way, is one where he calls people hateful and intolerant because of, and I'm not minimizing January 6th when I say this. He's projecting a lot of things that weren't necessarily there for people walking into the Capitol to protest or riot or whatever you want to call it. in that building.
Well, the problem is now that there are faces that have been put to some of these folks, he's demonizing grandma.
Yeah. Yes, he is.
So,
Anyways, I'm not here to comment on January 6th, other than to say that Bob Iger obviously mischaracterized the situation in order to use it as an excuse to do whatever he wanted. And by the way, the quality, I don't know if you've watched any of the MCU films that he referenced there with Black Panther, or any of the Disney animated films since then, or Pixar for that matter. They have not been of the same quality that we have come to expect from.
He got rid of those people, Jonas. I mean,
Yeah.
You get rid of the people that made you great. This is the conversation I like to have all the time, and you'll probably hear me say it here. And I've been saying it now for 4 or 5 years, as long as I've been on YouTube, and before that, the people that are around me that got tired of listening to me. But all of the institutional knowledge that they've walked out the door, since they've decided to move into the political arena, it's visible now. You can see it everywhere. You can see the people that have been forcibly retired from their positions of authority. A lot of them were creative. I mean, when you push out probably the greatest modern Imagineer of all time.
Are we talking about Tony Baxter?
No. Well, yeah, but I mean, he was one of the greats too. But no, I was speaking about Joe Rohde. There's a lot of unknown things that will become known, I would imagine, here later down the road, but of why he left. And
and I would say that Joe Rohde isn't, if I had to guess Joe Rohde's political opinions, one, they would have to be generally a guess. They didn't affect his work.
No. Oh, no. And that's why, again, when I see certain Imagineers that are still within the company, and what, the things that have happened to put them in the positions that they're in, to me, unfortunately, it now becomes a question as to how did you get here, why, and how are you in a position to have replaced Joe Rohde?
And how many of your research trips ended up in some New Orleans bar
Good
for
question.
Extended periods of time? All right. Well, we did have another video from Chris Russo to discuss, but I think we're going to need to push that to another video. This one is already 22 minutes long.
Oh goodness!
As my
I'm
counter
sorry,
goes.
Jonas.
I'm revealing that if I end up cutting something out, I don't think I'm going to end up cutting something out. How long this will be? So join us again here as we discuss another video. This one very focused on Bob Chapek. By the way, if a video of him came out talking like this, Bob Iger would be all over him. Just to point out that he would be walked out the door for making the company too political. But here we are talking about Bob Iger. That being said, like this video, if you like talking about stuff like this, consider sharing it out if you know someone who is not aware of what Bob Iger has been up to. And of course, consider subscribing to That Park Place for all the news that should be fun.
Thanks for watching That Park Place News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.